There is a specific kind of pain that comes from knowing, through mutual friends, or through their occasional late-night messages, or through the way they still watch your stories, or through that look in their eyes when you run into them unexpectedly, that your avoidant ex still cares about you, still thinks about you, still feels something when your name comes up, or when they're reminded of what you shared, or when they encounter places or songs or inside jokes that connect them back to the relationship that ended. The care is real. It's not your imagination. It's not wishful thinking. It's not you reading too much into small signs or creating narrative that doesn't exist. They actually do still care. But here is the truth that makes the caring almost more painful than indifference would be. They're not coming back. Not because they stopped caring. Not because they've moved on completely. Not because someone else has replaced you, or because time has erased what existed between you. They're not coming back because, and this is the crucial thing that makes sense of the entire contradictory situation, their caring and their capacity are two completely separate things, and the avoidant can care deeply about someone while simultaneously being completely incapable of being with them in ways that would create sustainable, healthy relationship. The caring doesn't create capacity. The feeling doesn't generate ability. The persistent thought of you doesn't translate into sustained presence with you. They can miss you desperately while knowing they would start withdrawing again within weeks if you got back together. They can recognize you were the best person they ever had while simultaneously knowing they don't have what it takes to keep the best person they ever had. They can acknowledge that what you shared was real and significant and meaningful, while being completely certain that trying again would end the same way, with their patterns emerging, with their fear overwhelming their desire, with their defensive system destroying what their heart wants to maintain. This is the devastating reality of loving an avoidant. They can feel everything and still do nothing. They can care completely and still stay gone. They can carry you in their heart while keeping you out of their life. And understanding why this paradox exists, why caring isn't enough to bring them back, why their awareness of what they lost doesn't translate into effort to get it back, why they can hold space for you emotionally while maintaining distance physically and relationally. This understanding doesn't make the pain disappear, but it does help you stop waiting for the caring to transform into return. Stop hoping their feelings will overcome their limitations. Stop believing that if they just cared enough, they would come back. The caring is already there. The caring has always been there. The caring alone has never been enough and will never be enough, because what prevents their return isn't lack of caring, but lack of capacity. And capacity isn't created by feeling more or caring deeper or missing you longer. Capacity is created through sustained difficult psychological work that most avoidants never do, because doing it requires facing the very wounds they've spent their entire life avoiding, requires sustaining the vulnerability they've structured their whole psychology around preventing, requires being uncomfortable consistently enough and long enough that change actually occurs rather than just being conceptually understood. Your avoidant ex cares, they're not coming back. And both of these things are simultaneously true, and both of these things have always been true. And understanding how both can exist together is what allows you to finally stop waiting for the caring to be enough. The specific ways their caring manifests that keep you hoping, while they maintain distance. The avoidant's continued caring isn't invisible. It shows up in specific ways that create hope in you, that they might come back, might change their mind, might finally be ready to try again. Understanding how their caring manifests helps you recognize what you're seeing, while also recognizing why what you're seeing isn't actually leading toward reconciliation. They continue monitoring your life through social media or through mutual friends, keeping themselves informed about how you're doing, while maintaining the actual distance that prevents genuine reconnection. They watch your Instagram stories consistently. They check your profile even though they're not commenting or liking things. They ask mutual friends about you in ways that seem casual, but reveal they're tracking your life, whether you're dating someone, how you're handling the breakup, whether you seem happy or seem to be struggling. This monitoring is evidence of caring. They care enough to want to know how you are, care enough that they cannot actually disconnect from your life completely, care enough that your well-being and your state still matter to them. But the monitoring happens from safe distance that allows them to care without having to act on the caring, without having to be vulnerable, without having to face the reality that knowing you're okay or knowing you're struggling creates feelings in them they would have to address if they were actually in contact with you. The monitoring maintains connection while preventing the vulnerability genuine reconnection would require. They reach out occasionally with messages that seem designed to maintain connection without actually committing to anything concrete. Late night texts, holiday messages, random, "this reminded me of you," communications that create hope without creating actual opportunity for reconciliation. The 2 a.m. I miss you text. The birthday message that's warmer than expected given that you're exes. The forwarded meme or article with thought of you. These communications serve specific function. They relieve the avoidant's temporary discomfort about missing you or thinking about you without requiring them to actually do anything about those feelings. Sending the message relieves the pressure. You receiving it and responding warmly makes them feel connected for a moment. But then nothing happens. No conversation about getting back together occurs. No plans are made. No real discussion about the relationship or what ended it or what would be different happens. The communication satisfied their temporary need to feel connected to you without requiring sustained presence or vulnerability or actual relationship. And these communications keep you hoping because they seem like signs they're thinking about returning, when actually they're signs they're managing their own discomfort about not being with you without having any intention of changing that fact. They become visibly affected when they see you, showing clear emotional response that reveals you still impact them, even though they're maintaining the distance that prevents acting on that impact. When you run into them, their carefully maintained composure cracks. You can see the emotion in their face. Their voice changes. They seem genuinely moved by seeing you. This visible impact is real. You do affect them. Your presence does create emotional response. The connection still exists at level that cannot be completely controlled or hidden. But the impact doesn't translate into action. After the encounter ends, nothing changes. They don't reach out afterward to suggest meeting intentionally. They don't use the encounter as opening to discuss rekindling relationship. The impact is real, but it remains contained. They feel it. You see them feeling it. And then they go back to their life without you, carrying the feeling but not acting on it, because acting on it would require sustained vulnerability. The encounter itself doesn't require. They keep items that belong to you, or that remind them of you, or that represent the relationship, holding on to physical objects in ways that suggest they're not ready to fully let go, even though they're not coming back. They still have your sweatshirt. Photos of you are still in their phone, even though they're not displayed. Gifts you gave them are still present in their living space. These kept items are evidence they're holding on to something, holding on to memories, holding on to connection, holding on to period of their life when you were present. But the holding on to objects doesn't translate into holding on to you. They can keep your sweatshirt and your memory while not wanting the actual relationship back. They can hold on to physical reminders while being certain they don't want to attempt genuine reconnection. The objects allow them to maintain connection without the vulnerability genuine relationship would require. They can think about you when they see the object, can feel connected to what you shared, can keep you present in some way, all without having to actually be with you or sustain intimacy with you or face their patterns with you. They speak about you with warmth and respect to others, defending you if anyone criticizes you, acknowledging what you meant to them, speaking about relationship without the devaluation that often characterizes how avoidants talk about exes. Mutual friends report that they never speak badly about you. If someone criticizes you in their presence, they defend you. When relationship comes up in conversation, they speak about it as meaningful, rather than dismissing it or minimizing its significance. This warm, respectful speaking about you is evidence of genuine caring. They're not rewriting history to make you the villain, not devaluing what you shared to make themselves feel better about the ending, not engaging in the defensive minimization that would protect them from feeling the loss. But their willingness to speak warmly about you doesn't mean they want to be with you. They can honor what you shared while being certain that what you shared cannot be sustained by them as they currently are. The respect and warmth in how they speak about you exists alongside complete certainty that coming back would be wrong choice for both of you. Why the caring doesn't translate into return, and what this reveals about how they understand love and relationships, the gap between the avoidance caring and their behavior, between feeling something for you and doing something about those feelings, reveals fundamental things about how they understand love and relationships that differ from how secure people understand these concepts. They've separated feeling from action in their understanding of love. Believing caring about someone is distinct from being able to be with them, and that incapacity for relationship doesn't negate the caring. Most secure people understand love as both feeling and action. You love someone and therefore you show up for them. You care and therefore you work through difficulties. You value them and therefore you do what's necessary to maintain connection. Feeling and action are integrated, but the avoidant has separated these completely in their understanding. They can care deeply while doing nothing about the caring. They can love you while not choosing you. They can value what you shared while making no effort to restore it. In their understanding, these aren't contradictions. Caring is internal emotional experience. Being together is external behavioral reality. And the two exist in separate domains that don't necessarily influence each other. They care. They're aware they're not capable of healthy relationship with you. Both of these are facts that coexist without creating obligation for one to change the other. This separation allows them to hold on to caring as truth about their internal experience, while maintaining distance as truth about their behavioral capacity. And never do these two truths have to reconcile with each other. Their awareness of their own patterns has evolved enough that they recognize returning would lead to same outcome. They care enough about you to not put you through their patterns again, even though they miss you. This is actually more mature position than the avoidant who keeps coming back, hoping this time will be different without doing any actual work. Your avoidant ex has reached level of self-awareness where they recognize their patterns a problem, recognize they would emerge again if relationship resumed, recognize that subjecting you to their emotional unavailability and withdrawal again would be harmful to you. They care enough about your well-being to stay away rather than coming back and hurting you again. This might not feel like care. It feels like abandonment, like they're choosing not to fight for relationship, like they're giving up. But from their perspective, staying away is the caring choice because it protects you from damage their unaddressed patterns would cause. They're right that coming back without addressing their wounds would lead to same outcome. But their choice to stay away rather than do the work to address wounds reveals caring has limits. They care enough to not hurt you again, but not enough to do the sustained difficult work that would make it possible to be with you without hurting you. They experience the fear of relationship as more powerful than the desire for relationship. Even though desire and caring exist, fear is stronger force in determining their behavior. They want you. They miss you. They care about you. These feelings exist and they're genuine. But fear is stronger. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of being trapped. Fear of losing themselves. Fear of the intimacy that sustained relationship would require. Fear of their own patterns emerging and proving once again that they're incapable of what they want. These fears don't eliminate the caring. Both exist simultaneously. But when fear and desire conflict, fear wins every time because their nervous system prioritizes avoiding fear-inducing situations over pursuing desired outcomes. The caring doesn't overcome the fear because overcoming fear would require sustained tolerance of discomfort. The avoidant's entire psychological system is designed to prevent. They would have to feel the fear and stay with you anyway. They would have to experience the panic about intimacy and not withdraw. They would have to face their patterns and work through them rather than protecting themselves by running. Fear wins because the avoidance system gives fear ultimate veto power over every other consideration, including how much they care. They've convinced themselves that staying away is kindness, rather than recognizing it's also avoidance of the vulnerability that working through things would require. The avoidant frames their choice to stay away as selfless act. I'm protecting you from my dysfunction. I'm caring about your well-being by not coming back and hurting you again. This framing allows them to feel good about their choice, allows them to feel like they're being mature and caring by staying away. But staying away is also avoidance. It protects them from the vulnerability of admitting they want to try again. It protects them from the risk of being rejected if they ask to come back. It protects them from the sustained discomfort of actually addressing their patterns through therapy. It protects them from having to be vulnerable and uncomfortable and scared while working to become capable of the relationship their caring tells them they want. Staying away is simultaneously kind, protecting you from their unaddressed patterns, and cowardly, avoiding the work required to address those patterns. The avoidant holds onto the kind interpretation while being unconscious of or defensive about the cowardly aspect. Their concept of relationship is fundamentally incompatible with what sustained partnership actually requires. They believe caring should be enough without recognizing that functional relationship requires consistent action over time, regardless of how you feel. The avoidant understands relationship as primarily about feeling. If you care about someone, if you love them, if you think about them, this constitutes relationship in their mind. But functional relationship isn't primarily about feeling. It's about sustained actions. It's about showing up consistently, even when you don't feel like it. It's about communication and compromise and working through difficulties and staying present even when presence is uncomfortable. The avoidance concept of relationship emphasizes internal emotional experience over external behavioral reality. They feel love, therefore they believe they're in some sense still connected to you, even though behaviorally they're completely absent from your life. This disconnect between their concept and reality of what relationship requires means they can feel like they're maintaining connection through caring about you while you're experiencing their complete absence. Their caring feels meaningful to them as evidence of ongoing connection. Your experience is that they're gone. Both are true from different perspectives, and the gap between perspectives is evidence. Their understanding of relationship is insufficient for actual sustained partnership. What the permanent distance, despite continued caring, actually means for your healing and your future. Your understanding that your avoidant ex cares but isn't coming back creates specific wound that requires specific healing. The wound of knowing you weren't insufficient to be cared about, but were still insufficient to be chosen, which feels almost more painful than if they simply didn't care. Processing what this means helps you move toward genuine healing, rather than remaining stuck in hoping their caring will eventually overcome their limitations. Their caring without return confirms that the problem was never your worthiness, but was always their incapacity. You were enough to be cared about deeply. You just weren't enough to make someone who's incapable of healthy relationship suddenly become capable. The avoidance caring is proof you weren't the problem. You were lovable enough to be loved. You were valuable enough to be missed. You were significant enough that they still think about you and monitor your life and feel emotion when they encounter you. This confirms you did nothing wrong, confirms the relationship mattered, confirms you offered something genuinely valuable, but their caring coexisting with their permanent distance reveals that your worth was never the variable determining whether relationship could be sustained. Their capacity was the variable, and your worth, however extraordinary, couldn't create capacity in someone whose wounds prevent them from sustaining intimate partnership. This is painful truth, because it means there was nothing you could have done differently. You couldn't have been more patient, or more understanding, or more available, or more anything. The limitation was never in you. It was always in them. And limitations in them are not things you can resolve through being better. Accepting that caring isn't enough to bring them back helps you release the fantasy that love conquers all, and helps you recognize that functional relationship requires capacity, not just feeling. The narrative you might have been holding, that if they just loved you enough, if they just missed you enough, if they just cared deeply enough, they would come back. This narrative is based on romantic fantasy that love conquers all obstacles. Reality is different. Love doesn't conquer psychological wounds that require professional treatment. Caring doesn't eliminate attachment patterns that took decades to develop. Missing someone doesn't create capacity for intimacy in someone whose entire defensive system is built to prevent intimacy. Functional relationship requires both people to have capacity for sustained presence, consistent communication, vulnerability, emotional regulation, and commitment to working through difficulties. Caring provides motivation, but doesn't provide capacity. Your avoidant ex might care enormously while completely lacking capacity. Understanding this helps you release fantasy that their feelings will eventually be strong enough to overcome their limitations. The feelings are already strong. The capacity doesn't exist, and capacity must be built through sustained therapeutic work, not through feeling more intensely. Recognizing they're staying away because they've chosen to live with their limitations rather than address them helps you understand this isn't about you not being worth the work. It's about them not being willing to do work that feels unbearable to them. When someone stays away, despite caring, interpretation you might make is that you weren't worth fighting for, weren't valuable enough to do the hard work for, weren't significant enough to motivate their change. But their staying away isn't about your worth. It's about their relationship to difficulty and discomfort. Addressing their attachment wounds would require sustained therapeutic work that feels overwhelming. It would require facing the childhood experiences that created their patterns. It would require tolerating massive discomfort as they work to develop new ways of being in relationship. It would require vulnerability that feels like exposure. It would require consistency that feels like suffocation. The work itself, independent of any question about whether you're worth it, feels unbearable to them. They're choosing not to do unbearable work, which is different from choosing that you're not worth fighting for. This distinction matters because it helps you understand their choice is about them and their limitations, not about you and your value. Understanding their position helps you stop waiting and start building life that doesn't require their return to be fulfilling. The most powerful response to their caring but distant position is creating extraordinary life they're no longer part of. While they're caring from distance, maintaining awareness of you while staying away, monitoring your life while not participating in it, you have choice about what you do with your own life and energy. You can wait, hoping their caring will eventually overcome their fear and their limitations, and they'll come back. Or you can build. You can create life so fulfilling, so rich, so aligned with your values and your goals that whether they return becomes increasingly irrelevant. You can develop into a person so evolved beyond who you were when relationship ended that even if they came back, you might not want them anymore because you've grown beyond the relationship you had. The most powerful response to someone who cares but stays away is becoming someone whose extraordinary life makes clear that whether they participate or not, you're building something remarkable. This isn't strategy to make them want you back. This is recognizing that your life is happening now, that waiting for someone who isn't coming is giving them control over your life they don't deserve, that you deserve to build extraordinary life, regardless of whether they're in it. Their caring combined with their permanent absence ultimately means you need to grieve both what you lost and what you'll never have. Not just relationship that ended, but fantasy of reunion you've been holding on to. Most breakup grief involves mourning what ended. But when you know they still care, additional grief layer exists. Grieving the reunion that's never going to happen. Grieving the hope that their caring would bring them back. Grieving the fantasy that love would be enough. This additional grief is necessary for genuine healing. As long as you're holding on to hope that they'll return, hope based on evidence they still care, you're not fully grieving. You're waiting, and waiting prevents healing, because healing requires accepting loss as final rather than temporary. Their caring makes the loss feel temporary. They still care, so maybe they'll come back. But their permanent distance reveals the truth. This is final. They're not coming back. The caring doesn't change that. Grieving requires accepting both truths. They care, and it's over. Both can be true simultaneously. And accepting both allows the grief to finally move toward resolution rather than remaining suspended in hope that prevents healing. Why they're staying away. Despite caring is actually protecting you from relationship that would never meet your needs. The avoidance choice to stay away despite caring feels like rejection, but understanding what return would actually look like reveals their staying away is protecting you from painful cycle that would end the same way, possibly after you've invested even more time and emotional energy. If they came back without doing sustained therapeutic work, the same patterns would emerge within weeks or months. The initial reconnection would feel good, but their nervous system would reactivate all the same fear responses once intimacy reached previous levels. The beginning would be honeymoon period where they're motivated by missing you, where novelty of reunion creates positive feelings, where they're trying to be different without having actually developed different capacities. You would feel hopeful. Things would seem different. You would believe this time would work. But as relationship progressed back to levels of intimacy and commitment that existed before, their nervous system would recognize the familiar territory and would activate familiar defenses. The withdrawal would start. The emotional unavailability would return. The hot-cold cycles would resume. Nothing would have actually changed because nervous system patterns don't change through wanting them to change, or through missing someone, or through good intentions. They change through sustained therapeutic work over extended time. Without that work, reunion leads to repetition. And repetition means experiencing the same pain again, possibly after believing things would be different this time, which creates additional layer of devastation beyond the original loss. Their capacity for sustained intimacy hasn't increased just because they miss you. Missing you demonstrates they valued what they lost, but doesn't demonstrate they've developed ability to maintain it. The avoidant missing you tells you something important. The relationship mattered. You mattered. What you shared was valuable enough that its absence is felt. But missing you is information about the past. What existed was valuable, not about the future. They can now sustain what they couldn't sustain before. Capacity for sustained intimacy is developed through specific work. Therapy focused on attachment wounds, development of emotional regulation skills, practice being vulnerable in safe contexts, understanding of own patterns and triggers, development of new neural pathways through repeated practice of new behaviors over time. Missing you accomplishes none of this work. Caring about you accomplishes none of this work. Their missing and caring are real, but they haven't created the capacity they lacked when relationship ended. Coming back with same capacity means coming back to same outcome. You would likely end up in position of managing their anxiety and their patterns rather than having the reciprocal partnership you deserve. The inequality that existed before would be amplified by your awareness of their limitations. If they came back without addressing their core wounds, you would be entering relationship with full awareness of their patterns, full knowledge of their limitations, full understanding of their incapacity. This knowledge would likely lead you to manage yourself differently, being careful not to trigger their withdrawal, monitoring your own needs to avoid overwhelming them, adjusting your expectations to accommodate their limitations. This accommodation would create fundamentally unequal dynamic where you're doing disproportionate emotional labor to keep relationship functioning. You would be managing both your own needs and their anxiety. You would be responsible for maintaining stability. They're incapable of maintaining themselves. This inequality would breed resentment even if you entered it willingly. You deserve partnership where both people are capable of managing their own emotions, where both people can show up consistently, where both people have developed capacity for sustained intimacy, rather than one person constantly accommodating the other's incapacity. The pain of the ending would be multiplied if you went through it again. The second ending would carry all the pain of the first, plus the added devastation of hoping things would be different and discovering they weren't. First ending was devastating. You grieved the loss of relationship, grieved the future you imagined, grieved the person you thought they were or could become. But first ending included some hope. Hope that they would grow. Hope that they would do the work. Hope that time apart would create the conditions for real change. If relationship resumed without real work and ended again, and it would end again because patterns repeat without intervention, the second ending would be worse. It would include all the grief of first ending, plus the grief of your hopes being wrong, plus the recognition that you gave them another chance and they proved they're truly incapable of what you need, plus the time you spend in reconciliation that could have been spent healing or moving forward. The multiplication of pain isn't worth the temporary relief of having them back. Their staying away protects you from this multiplied devastation, even though it doesn't feel protective right now. Your avoidant ex staying away, despite caring, is gift you cannot yet recognize because it's protecting you from investing more time in someone who fundamentally cannot meet your needs as they currently are. Functional, healthy relationship requires both people to be capable of sustained intimacy, consistent presence, emotional availability, vulnerability, effective communication, and commitment to working through difficulties together. Your avoidant ex lacks these capacities. Their caring doesn't create these capacities. Their missing you doesn't develop these capacities. Their monitoring your life doesn't build these capacities. The only thing that builds these capacities is sustained professional therapeutic work over extended time, and they've chosen not to do that work. Their staying away means you're not investing more years with someone incapable of meeting your basic relationship needs. It means you're free to find someone who already possesses the capacities your ex lacks. It means you can build life with someone who doesn't need to be taught how to show up consistently because they already know how. Their staying away isn't rejection, it's release. They're releasing you from waiting for them to become capable of what they cannot currently provide. And that release, though it feels painful now, is what allows you to move toward the relationship you actually deserve with someone who already has capacity to provide it. Your avoidant ex cares. They're not coming back. And their not coming back is the most honest, most self-aware choice they could make, given their current limitations. Honor their choice by making your own. Stop waiting. Start building and create life so extraordinary that whether they ever become capable becomes completely irrelevant because you've already found everything you needed without them.